You've taken the time to come and see our film. Every time we watch it's really emotional for us. And as you might imagine, we've seen it. We've seen it a couple times. If you were short like me, Freddie, that wouldn't be a problem. But you're not. How should we start?
I just love that film. I don't ever get tired of watching it. I tell Dana, I think I've watched it about 10 or 20 times. Those are just the times that I admit to. But yeah, that film is very emotional. It, let's see, how should we talk? Should we talk about how?
Maybe how we started it?
Oh, okay. So my name's Frederica Newton, and Huey was my husband. And Huey was the co-founder of the Black Panther Party, which started in Oakland in 1966. And since 1966, there you go. Dana's repping. This party became the lead in an international movement. It wasn't just local to Oakland, but was internationally impactful. But there was nothing in Oakland nothing that permanently marked the presence of the Black Panther Party in any way other than murals that community members had done. The city of Oakland had done nothing to commemorate the legacy of this powerful organization. And so, now it's going to be 30 years in next year that I co-founded the Dr. Huey P. Newton Foundation, which was to preserve and promote the legacy of the Black Panther Party. And we decided to, on the space where Huey died on that street, we were to rename that street Dr. Huey P. Newton Way. But on that very place where he had taken his last breath, there was not even a plaque there. So we decided that something needed to be done to mark that very sacred space. And I thought of a plaque, and I went around the corner from where the site was, and to a place that deals in metal art. And I told them what I wanted to do, and they didn't know who Huey was. So of course I said, well, they're not the people to do this. And I called Dana King. Dana and I had met earlier because we also have a plan to create a Black Panther Party national Black Panther Party sculpture to commemorate the whole legacy of the Black Panther Party. And I had spoken with Dana a few months prior to that to ask her if she could do this plaque.
So I got a price for the plaque, and this was still in the concept that it would be on the ground, and we agreed that the ground was not the place for a plaque for Huey. And so I thought, well, we'll stand one up, kind of like a sandwich board. And then I called the foundry and I got prices, and then I called Frederick and I said, Freddie, for the price of this plaque, I can create a bust of Huey. And Frederica said, let's do it. And from there, Frederica has an entire team of people who participate in the foundation. None of them really knew it. We just kind of went freelancing.
We went rogue.
We went rogue. And created this bust. And the people in the community protect him. They commune with him. They leave him flowers. They leave him candles. They love having him there. And in the making of the bust, you saw my studio, and Panthers came by. Huey's barber, Diamond Ken, came through and helped me with that fro, because Huey was very particular about it, and I did not want to mess it up. Fred Hampton Jr. out of Chicago, whose father was murdered by the Chicago police and the FBI. Who was infiltrated by Iraq, and who told them the location of his bed and everything in his room, and he was murdered. And Fred Jr. continues his legacy. He came in from Chicago with his crew, and we wanted this to be deep community engagement because the Panthers were for the community. And I think that what, as an artist, my hope is that people who may not know, or let's say they come upon the sculpture accidentally or intentionally, the education is the same. So my hope for my work is that people will dig deeper into the history of the person being honored in statuary, but also dig into their own history. We all have family history here. I can only go back as far as my great-grandparents who were enslaved out of South Carolina. But it's important history. We deserve to know where we come from. And this is part of that legacy.
When I say that the city of Oakland didn't commemorate the party, there were many children and adults that didn't know their own history, that knew very little about the Black Panther Party through no fault of their own. It's not in any textbooks. So, generations have grown up without knowing their history. So we thought it was very important to place some of that history on the front of that plaque. And, oh gosh, there was something I was going to say. Now I've forgotten it. When we talk about art and activism, the Black Panther Party had a newspaper. The Black Panther Party ended formally in 1982. For 13 years, we had a newspaper, the Black Panther Party newspaper, basically. And on the back of every one of those newspapers, if you research this, if you Google, you'll see that there was art on the back of the paper, primarily done by our Minister of Culture, Emory Douglas, who is a world-renowned artist. But there were also other artists, women artists, Asali Dixon, others, who contributed to that artwork. The artwork wasn't merely artwork, it was what we call the revolutionary art. Because through those illustrations, because we knew that the Black community wasn't necessarily a reading community, but that the information had to be concise. So we would have images of police and oppression, and there were 65 survival programs, so we would illustrate those survival programs. One of them being, many of you know, the Free Breakfast for Children program. There was free sickle cell anemia testing. There were free health clinics. Babies were dying from lead in the paint. The old Victorians in Oakland are old, and there was lead-based paint. Lead is sweet, so babies were dying and getting really sick from eating that lead-based paint. There was no testing. Do you know in North Carolina, 2 women Panthers created free ambulance programs because the ambulances weren't coming into the Black community, so Black people were dying in their homes. So they learned how to be EMTs and got a hearse donated and started driving the ambulance in the Black community and taking people to the hospitals. So these illustrations would demonstrate the work that the party was doing to serve the people in their communities. And so I knew that it was really important to continue that, to continue representing activism through art. And that's what, this is just the first. This is just the first piece that we plan to do. We're working on, with the National Park, to create National Park, Black Panther Party National Park, because this is an American story, and that's the job of the National Park Service, to tell the American story. So we want to create a Black Panther Party National Park comprised of different urban sites in Oakland, in the Bay Area, to show the work that the Black Panther Party did. Last month we opened in Oakland, in a very prominent, right downtown Oakland, which is historically significant to the party, because on that corner we sold newspapers, the Black Panther Party newspapers. We've opened the Black Panther Party Museum. So I welcome you to research it, look it up, Black Panther Party, at Black Panther Party on Instagram, and BlackPantherPartyMuseum.com. So you can see since we've opened the doors, it's been just inundated with schools. And I don't even know how these people knew it was going to open, because the very first day we had 3 groups from different schools there. So people are hungry for this knowledge. People of all ages. If you can't walk out the door in Oakland without somebody having a personal story about the Black Panther Party, either they were fed, their father. Matter of fact, raise your hands here. Anybody that has any contact or any history in your family. You're not from Oakland, because in Oakland, everybody does. If you think about it, you knew somebody. Okay, there you go. There you go. Somebody knew somebody. Somebody was fed in the breakfast program. Somebody's uncle was in the breakfast, served in the party. This is a very personal story. And I don't walk out the door one day in Oakland or in New York or in DC or in North Carolina without somebody having a story of the Black Panther Party. And the one thing that I want to say is that I really hope that we convey that the Black Panther Party, in which is not at all what you saw, the images that you saw in the newspapers, which is why we created our own, the Black Panther Party was based on a foundation of love. The Black Panther Party wanted to serve their community out of love. The average age was 19 years old, and these young men and women laid down their lives out of love for their community. We worked in coalition with all like-minded groups. There was also propaganda that we were a racist organization. It's not true. We had an we had Asian alliances and even membership in the party. We even worked with a group called the Young Patriots, where they carried the Confederate flag, and they were there their mission was the same, to fight oppression. They were poor white folks, and they faced the same oppressive machine that we did. By the time that we met, they put down their Confederate flag and picked up the banner of the Black Panther Party. So there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot that hasn't been accessed, and that's what we're doing at the Black Panther Party Museum, so that you can know this history and know that it really, really was a legacy of love.
I want to double down on that, because the government has made sure that we do not learn this history. Not the history of the Panthers, not the truth about enslavement, the list is long, right? When you think about the organization MOVE in Philadelphia, an entire block was blown up for what? People were killed for what? I mean, it continues today. There's a file on this woman, been a file on this woman. We're still careful on the phone about what we say. It's unending, and we're witnessing it here in Florida. The truth of the history of African descendants in this country is being withheld. It's being censored, if told at all. And it's not just Florida. It's happening all over the country. Florida may lead the way, but it needs to stop. And one of the ways it stops is we tell our stories differently and with different materials. We're not all visual, or we're not all auditory, we're not all learners based on writing. Many of us, I'm a visual learner, and it encourages me to dig deeper in other ways, in other formats of learning. And that's what this is. And that's what Frederica is doing, is reaching people where they are so that they can learn this history. I know that Black churches here in Florida, just like it happened in the Civil Rights South, are giving lessons. They're educating people in the basements of the churches so that our children know the truth. As enslaved people, it was against the law for us to learn to read and write. But we did, didn't we? So we will find a way out of no way, because we always have. And this alliance, Frederick is not kidding, people are hungry for this information. And it's stunning, most of us had to learn it when we were grown adults. I didn't learn it in school. I'm 64. I didn't learn it. You know, they paraded the same black folks in front of us every Black History Month. We never went to a museum as a kid. My mom was a single mom. The only trip we took as a school was to the bread factory, because that's what they thought of us. We could be workers, you know. And they didn't encourage our confidence. They didn't encourage our intelligence. They didn't encourage our connectedness. And what this country has tried to do, and has done successfully, and continues to do, is to separate us. In addition to the yellow peril that the Panthers worked with, and the Patriots, they worked with lesbian and gay people at the time. They worked with Native Americans. They worked with feminists, poor whites, in addition to the Patriots. And that's the fear that the government had, was that we would all sit down at the same table and realize that we were all being oppressed in the same way.
And the tables look just like this.
That's right, tables look just like this, packed, right? And that fear is the same today. We are being intentionally divided. And Frederica, you said it, the Panthers were not, they didn't hate white people. They were not nationalists. They were not xenophobic. They were inclusive. And all we ever hear about them was that, you know, they carried guns and they killed people. The Panthers started as the Black Panther Party for self-defense. Tell them the history of the animal of the panther.
The reason why that was chosen was because a panther never strikes first. They only defend themselves. So, and that the reason, well, actually one of our first programs was to protect Black people, or people in the community who were being, mostly Black people, who were being brutalized by the police. So Huey used to go out, Huey and Bobby, who were the co-founders at 24 years old, used to go out into the community with a law book, because Huey was a law student. He was in law school. A law book in one hand and a rifle in the other, because at the time it was legal. And he would tell people their rights, so that, and to protect them so that they would not be brutalized in those Oakland streets. The OPD, Oakland Police Department, recruited the police officers from down south to come there and serve in the force. And there were no Black officers at the time. They were all white and they were all Southern. So, and they also protected school children, little Black kids, where the city wouldn't put a stoplight at a certain place where the elementary school kids were walking across the street. So they would get out there in their berets and their leather jackets. You don't see pictures of this, of them walking and acting as crossing guards, making sure that these kids were safe when they were going across the streets. They created a program called SAFE, Seniors Against a Fearful Environment, where we would make sure that the seniors were able to get to banks safely, get their meds from the pharmacies, get to banks and cash their checks in safety. But honestly, there were 65 survival programs that most people only know of one or two. And this is the work that we did. When I say, you see this brother in the picture on the cover of a newspaper with a gun, but you don't see him at 5 o'clock in the morning feeding children in a room like this. Those aren't the images that you saw. There was a time when 70% of the membership of the Black Panther Party were women, and almost all of the leadership was women. You don't know this. This was not known. Mainstream media made it a point not to show this. So we knew we couldn't do this alone. I mentioned it a little bit in the film. My mother was Jewish, and the way that I met Huey was I'd gone away to school. I grew up in an activist family. I did what a whole lot of teenagers do, is rebel against their parents. I was not interested in that. Show me some cute outfits, or that. I was more interested in, that kind of thing. And when I came home from college, my mother said, Huey Newton is coming for lunch. My neighbors had taken me to see him that day when he was released from prison. And what struck me was the diversity in the crowd. And I went away to school like a month later, and I came back home at Christmas time. My mother, who was a Jewish realtor who worked her whole entire life against racist practices in the real estate field, the Black Panther Party trusted her to be their realtor. And so when I came home, there was Huey in my dining room. So I think what enabled me to join the party, and what brought me close to Huey, was the fact that I didn't have to be at war with myself around the fact that during a time that was very polarized, either you were black or white, you couldn't be both, that I didn't have to apologize for my mother or this side of my family. So I could not have been a part of an organization that was racist at its foundation. And so that's just one of the many, what's the word? The way that the government painted the Black Panther Party in ways that was just not true. So I think, yeah, I was gonna say. You're right. We'd like to open this up for questions. If anybody has any, we'd be happy to answer. Don't be shy.
But you gotta come get this microphone. No.
You in the film, you talked about Huey's vulnerability and his love. Would you just tell a story about some moment about his vulnerability and love?
It didn't come across really well in the film, I don't think, but that day, the first day that I met him, and I was not political. I was, just coming into my own. Started reading books in college that I had never read before, Frantz Fanon and Richard Wright and Nikki Giovanni and Sonia Sanchez, and listening to jazz. And so I was just, starting to come into my own. But these people that were in the house were young students. They were intellectuals, they were activists, and they were asking these really deep political, ideological questions that I had no knowledge of. But I was really interested in who this guy was. Like, who is he? I've seen him on these iconic photos that I know you all know, Huey in the wicker chair. It was on everybody's wall. And who was he? And so it became clear that I hadn't interacted with him. I was, just flitting around and emptying ashtrays. And so, being the hostess' daughter, I asked him, could you tell me what it was like for you in prison? And so he put down his fork, and he gave it a lot of thought. And I was embarrassed. I had this little simple question to ask, but then he looked up and he said, it was very lonely there. And it was something about the attention that he gave to that question and the thought, and that he would consider this young girl. I was 19, I just turned 19, that he gave such consideration to that simple question that really moved me. And Huey he was funny. He was a really funny dude. He was one of those guys that he would tell some corny joke and it wasn't funny, but people would laugh, and I said, you got that all wrong. I mean, the words weren't He said, like, Ike and Tina Turner's song, Proud Mary. He said, man, them primaries, they keep on voting, them primaries. And the brothers would say, yeah, brother, they had them primaries. I said, primaries? It's a Proud Mary. You know, stuff like that. I don't know. He couldn't have a horrible sense of direction. So I got a license plate that said lost in a lost world. He just didn't know. Either he just ain't go in the general direction of where we think we're supposed to go. And it's a funny thing because men and women had a different response to him. Like if we'd be out in the street, black women, didn't matter the age, usually older black women, more senior black women, would, you know, talk to him like he was their child. What are you doing? One time he was looking for the PG&E, the gas, where you pay your gas bill, and like, now you know, this building has not been here for 10 years. No, I don't know why you're here. You know, they would talk to him like that, where men would, you know, have a different response to him. So people, he was funny, and he was at his best with kids. He was like a Pied Piper with kids. And I think kids really know the essence of somebody. So I had a son when we got married, and our house was always full of children. And we really tried our best to make it like a normal family under abnormal circumstances. He was taken to prison. Our house was raided by the police more than once, turned upside down. Both times I just left them in there, let them just shut the door and left the police in the house. So we take pictures at the Capwell's, Sears, photo studio, just anything to cobble together a little normal life. And he would indulge me in those things. I remember the one time we had an old Mercedes, and he loved that car. And it needed water, I thought. I poured it in the engine or something, yeah. And people thought, oh, girl. He just said, that's my bride. So he's easy. He was really easy in that way. Mm-hmm.
And he was the theoretician of the Panthers. And that put him in the spotlight where he didn't want to be. He didn't want that role, but ended up being the spokesperson for the Panthers because he was brilliant. Brilliant. That PhD he has is real, from Santa Barbara? Santa Cruz. UC Santa Cruz. So that was real.
He's authored
5 books that you can find through Amazon if you like. But yes, he earned his degree after he came back he was in exile in Cuba for 3 years, and when he came back, he got a doctorate of philosophy in the history of consciousness, I think. There you go, sis. Are there any other questions?
Yes.
Good evening. Thank you once again for coming and joining us here in lovely Gifford, Florida. I'm Chris Wyndham, for those who do not know. And I'm kind of swept up in kind of an emotional time warp right now. You know, we've got a long history in the Americas. We know of one side of the oppression, but then there's always assistance. Like you mentioned, the brother who infiltrated and gave Fred up. And I'm thinking about when Columbus showed up, he had help. You had tribes who were rivals, and it was to their benefit for them to come here and take out the other guys. And among these tribes, you had someone who was the namesake of where Tupac Shakur got his middle name, Amaru, Oakland's own. And it just hit me that 20 years ago this month, I was standing on a stage at the Douglas Theater in Macon, Georgia, and it was the first time ever that they decided to include hip hop in the Black History program. And I performed Tupac's Changes, and I'm sure you well know it has the line in the said it's time to make a change. That's what Huey said. 2 shots in the dark, now Huey's dead. And I was sitting with my grandmother 8 years before, in 1996, 30 years after the party was founded, when they announced that Tupac was murdered. And that was the first song that they played. And so if you could, just since the time of the party and your husband's murder, could you speak on the role that some of us have played in our own demise whenever some of our heroes start to rise?
Wow. The role that we played in our own demise. I don't know that I want to talk about the role that we played in our own demise.
And the only reason I would even bring it up is because, we're making the argument right now for ensuring that our history is told. I learned something interesting just a couple days ago of the reason why the Old Testament is still included in the Christian Bible. You see, many things were said to change with regards to the law when Jesus came, but then they wanted to make sure that the mistakes of their ancestors were known. That's why those were included. And oftentimes we have our eyes on the proposed enemy so much that we don't even see the ones that are smiling in our face sometimes, And so just to kind of contextualize, not to put a negative face on us because we're already getting plenty of help with that, but to show that we're human just like anybody else. We've got our villains, we got Killmonger just like we got T'Challa. That's the only reason we're allowed to say the words Black Panther in school now, because you had the Black Panther Marvel movie come out, and then Coogler was very intentional about making sure they had a scene in Oakland so that we kind of start rolling in, so at least it softens that language around it. But especially during my time, my generation, when I see them celebrate Black Panther from a context of, oh yeah, they had guns, they basically glorifying the way that the party was portrayed by the other folks, which is ironic. And you could put on a beret and do TikTok dances all day, but that does not equate to preserving the legacy.
But,
And I just want to get some insight into the evolution of that over time, like how that may have existed in the time of the party versus how it's evolved into today. Like most people don't even realize that's the case, but just historically, retrospectively looking at how it evolved over time, it's kind of like that little leak in the faucet that you didn't pay attention to, and then you come home and your whole apartment's flooded, and now you're getting kicked out and you and your children on the street. I know who has the hoses, but tell me about the leaks.
So the Panthers came into being at a time when activism was widely done. The John Lewises, the Ella Bakers, the MLKs, pick one. But they watched that activism, and they watched things very slowly change. And, we had the Civil Rights Act of '64 that allowed us to buy our own homes in any neighborhood we wanted to, but then they rolled in redlining, right? So we get a step forward and they have to take 5 back. But the Panthers came into that watching leadership and watching people engage in what is theirs rightfully to have and to do and to be in this country. And we don't have that now. And I feel like there is a complacency of hopelessness that we vote. We sometimes vote against our best interest. Sometimes we vote because we have no one else to vote for. And we hope that they will see us and help us, not help us, that they will do the right thing on behalf of us. And it doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen. And yet we have to vote again and again. And, you know, that weighs on a person, it weighs on a people. You know, when we watch our children get killed in the streets. Gunned down, run down for jaywalking, selling single cigarettes, eating candy, playing in a playground with a little toy gun, just like the little kids do. It's hard not to be complacent in our hopelessness. And we gotta shake it off. We have to shake this off. Because the power is in the people. And the Panthers knew that. And they encouraged that, and they facilitated a way to make that happen for people, for people to join together and to feel safe in that grouping. We need to find that again. And that's all I got on that.
You know, I think the reason why I had that response, like, I don't want to talk about that, was because I'm sitting here thinking 1966, 1971, that's where my head is tonight. And I'm thinking about the 28 members of the Black Panther Party that were killed by the police. I'm thinking about that COINTELPRO that turned husbands and wives against each other because he didn't know who was an agent and who wasn't. I'm thinking about the fact that at 19 years old, we didn't know if we were going to live 24 hours, so we lived in the moment. And I'm thinking about how these 19-year-olds now are 75 and 74, and how so many of my comrades suffer and have suffered all these years so much from post-traumatic whatever as a result of living their lives like that for many years, because we were literally in foxholes as our comrades got gunned down and had no place to go for relief. Who can you trust to go to get help from when you were a veteran member of a revolutionary organization like the Black Panther Party? So one of the things that we didn't do well, because we didn't have the leisure, was to take care of ourselves. We didn't take care of ourselves spiritually. We didn't know. We didn't know that we even needed to. We didn't have any balance. There was no recreation. We just got up at 5 in the morning till wee hours of the night and worked. When we weren't feeding kids in the morning, we wrapped it up by packaging newspapers over in central distribution over in San Francisco at night. And then we come home and live communally, we all live communally, and find a corner of some room to sleep on. So it was hard for me to talk about what we did wrong, and we didn't do it all right. I mean, we did our best. We were kids. We did the best we could. We wanted to turn this whole thing upside down. We wanted to redefine what relationships look like. And in the process, families were separated. Kids were raised in a school rather than raised in their family, in the Black Panther Party. Because we were working 24/24. All the children were put together. So families were broken apart, but we didn't know any better. So I'd say that we can learn from our victories and definitely learn from our mistakes. It's taken this long for party members to come together and talk about this stuff. Where people, Erica Huggins, who was one of the leaders in the Black Panther Party and director of the Oakland Community School, which is our current exhibition at the Black Panther Party Museum, one of them, wrote a book. She didn't write it. She got a collective of 50 veteran Black Panther Party women women, women, and she traveled across the states where these women could finally tell their stories. They've been silent all these years, so they could tell their stories. And it's just it's a beautiful book. It's called Comrade Sisters. You can get it on Amazon. And you see these women, and they tell these incredible stories of what they did in the party and how it's impacted their lives and the work that they're doing now. So it's been over 50-something years of healing for folks, because these people were hunted well beyond when they left the party in their 20s. It's impacted their lives since the 60s. So when I think about what we did wrong, I'd like to think about the fact that these people, we've passed the torch on, and that we're here to share what we could have done better and how we did our very best in doing what we did. Yes.
I just want to thank you. I'm glad you're raising your hands. It's a complacency of hopefulness. We've been fed so few morsels that when we get them, we hang on to them and we become complacent.
I think it's important that we honor the Black Panthers because that movement gave our communities, black, white, polka dot, whatever color, a sense of pride, a sense of accomplishment, and so many other organizations sprung off from them. The Black Panthers died, but other organizations that were trying to empower people rose up. And even though you didn't see the big Panther party with the leather jackets and stuff, you still saw people trying to feed kids, trying to educate them, trying to teach them Black history. And it continues, and it's almost like we're looking for this big, right, one person or one organization to do it when we're all responsible. We're responsible for what we do in our communities. We're responsible for sharing the knowledge that we have. We're responsible for our churches being churches and not just places or whatever. And we're responsible for all the positiveness that comes out of it. So I, as a young woman who was in college during that time, I had my Huey Newton sign right here. I had my Angela Davis sign right there. I had my B.B. King sign right there. And it helped me to be whatever God wanted me to be at this time. And so I now try to do everything I can to kind of force my way and inch my way in situations so I can talk about the power of Blackness, so I can talk about the power of communities coming together. And I'm not trying to do it for claim or fame. I'm just trying to do it because I know this is what we should all be doing. And so it's not one person's responsibility. But I applaud the Black Panthers.
Well, I just want to say I'm from New York, and I'm going to put the Black Panther Party and other different parties that were going on during that period of time. Back in the 60s, okay, I know the times were rough down south, but also